Genesis chapter 41. After 2 whole years, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile, when 7 cows, sleek and fat, came up from the Nile and began to feed among the rushes. Behind them came 7 other cows from the Nile, lean and scraggy, and stood on the banks of the Nile beside the cows already there. These devoured the sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep again and had a second dream. He saw growing on one stalk 7 ears of corn that were plump and ripe, and after these there sprouted 7 more ears of corn that were thin and scorched by the east wind. Now the thin ears of corn swallowed up the 7 plump and ripe ones. Then Pharaoh awoke and realized that it was a dream. In the morning he was uneasy and called all the magicians and wise men in Egypt. He told his dreams to them, but not one among them was able to interpret his dreams. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh. "This reminds me of my wrongs. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and had me and the chief baker put in custody in the house of the captain of the guard. Once on the same night we both had a dream, each with its own meaning. With us was a young Hebrew, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him our dreams, he interpreted them, giving to each one its own meaning. What he interpreted for us actually came to pass. I was restored to my office, and the chief baker was hanged. Pharaoh then had Joseph summoned, and they took him quickly from the prison. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he presented himself to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh addressed him, 'I have had a dream, which no one can explain. Now I have heard about you that when you hear a dream, you are able to interpret it.' Joseph replied, 'It is not at all I, but God who will give Pharaoh a favorable answer.' Pharaoh then began telling Joseph his dream. 'In my dream, I was standing beside the Nile, when 7 fine cows, sleek and fat, came up from the river and began to feed in the rushes. Then 7 other cows came up behind them. These were poor, scraggy, and lean. I had never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The thin, gaunt cows ate up the first 7 fat cows, but after they had consumed them, it was as if they had not eaten them at all, because they remained as lean and scraggy as they were before. And then I woke up. I also saw in another dream 7 ears of corn growing on one stalk, full and ripe. Then after them there sprouted 7 ears of corn that were thin and scorched and withered by the east wind. The withered ears of corn swallowed up the 7 good ears. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain its meaning." Then Joseph said, "Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has just revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 fat cows are 7 years, and the 7 good years are 7 years. It is one dream. The 7 lean and scraggy cows coming after them are 7 years, as are the 7 withered ears of corn scorched by the east wind, and they are 7 years of famine. As I said to Pharaoh, God is revealing to him what he is about to do. 7 years are coming, and there will be great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt, and they will be followed by 7 years of famine. Then the time of abundance will be forgotten, and famine will exhaust the land. So severe will the famine be that no one will remember the time of plenty." If then Pharaoh had the same dream twice, it is because God has so determined, and will soon make it happen. Now it is for Pharaoh to choose an intelligent and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Pharaoh could have supervisors in the land, and could levy a tax of 1/5 of the produce of the land during the 7 years of plenty. Let them gather all the food of these productive years that are coming, and by the authority of Pharaoh, store grain for food in the towns and keep it. This food will be a reserve for the 7 years of famine that are coming to the land of Egypt, so that the people will not die of hunger. The proposal of Joseph pleased Pharaoh and his ministers, and Pharaoh asked them, "Where shall we find anyone else like this man, possessed with the Spirit of God?" And to Joseph he said, "Since it is to you that God has made known all this, there can be no one as intelligent and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people will obey your orders. Only as far as the throne is concerned will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." He then took the signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He clothed him in fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot that was second only to his, and they cried out before him, "Make way." Thus he was put in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your consent, no one is to raise hand or foot in the whole land of Egypt." Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath-Paneah and gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. After that, Joseph took charge of the whole of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he was summoned to the presence of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. After taking his leave of Pharaoh, he journeyed through the entire land of Egypt. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced abundantly. So Joseph gathered up all the food that was produced during these years, storing in each town the food from the fields around it. Joseph stored huge quantities of wheat, like the sand by the sea, so much that they lost count of the amount. Before the years of famine came, Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore Joseph 2 sons. Joseph called his firstborn Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's household." He called the second by the name of Ephraim, for he said, "God has made me fruitful with children in the land of my sorrow." When the 7 years of plenty throughout the land of Egypt came to an end, the 7 years of famine began as Joseph had foretold. There was famine in all the countries, but food was to be had in every part of Egypt. When the land of Egypt began to suffer from the famine, the people came to Pharaoh for food. But Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." When the famine had spread throughout the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was indeed severe over the land. As the famine had worsened throughout the whole world, people came from other countries to buy grain from Joseph.